Please welcome Ragnar Lindblad, Head of the Department for Healthcare Digitalization. Nu får du klappa.
Two scores and 1 year ago, a young Gothenburg man went up a hill and came down from a mountain. And that young man was, of course, me. And the year was 1976, and I was 18 years old, and I've never heard about a mobile phone. I started my medical studies in the house opposite this one, outside here, and was trained a hematologist here in Gothenburg, using paper patient records, using textbooks, as I think all of you know them, these paper-bound things. That was the sole source of information in those days. And I had a special course in using Mednet, the Medline, the online version of finding scientific information that could be reached from a few terminals at the medical library here and run on big computers stored somewhere in a huge house with special chilling and managed by small men in white coats. And I think sometimes it's good to be a bit humble about the actual time that we have spent digitalization, because it's only a few decades. And it's interesting also that we have here in Gothenburg a very long history of digitalization. This is the founder of the city, Gustav Adolf II, who in 1621 founded the city of Gothenburg. And what did he use to found it? Of course, he used the digit and said, this is a good place for a town. And I want to call it Gothenburg. So the questions I've been given is it possible for healthcare to catch up with the rest of society? And then it might be a good thing to think a bit about where is the rest of the society? Are we really left behind, or are we fighting the same war in different areas? This picture I've been using for a couple of years, and I've stolen it with pride from one of the ministries, about what digitalization is. And in the music industry, there has been a digitalization in 2 steps. First, we had these wonderful vinyl records with their inbuilt scratch sounds and the fully analog sound. And then we got the very dry digital sound of the CD with envelopes that couldn't depict all the lyrics and the beautiful pictures of our favorite artists. And then came file sharing and eventually streaming. And today, most of us consume music via Spotify or some of their competitors. And what happened is that the whole industry changed, and it wasn't the music industry themselves that made the change. It was some guys who liked cheap music and was interested in the technology and a new way of using technology. So when we're talking about digitalization of healthcare, we mustn't assume that it is just the traditional healthcare organizations that will be responsible for that. And I think we have several examples of that here today. And also there has been a long trend in various terms and words for describing this. I think many of you in this room remember when we talked about healthcare. And then came telemedicine. And telemedicine usually was used when the doctor and the patient was far away. Teleradiology, if the cable from the radiology machine and the doctor is less than 150 meters, it's ordinary radiology. And if it's more than 150 meters, it's teleradiology. Then came IT, and when IT had been used for a while, it sounded a bit technical, and then the term e-health was given for that new movement, and a lot of synonyms like m-health and i-health and so on. And now everyone talks about digitalization, and I hope that we in this room will live the day when we talk about health and taking care of health again, because I think we are closing up to that moment very fast. This device is 10 years, and its younger cousin, who everyone talks about, the iPad, is 7 years today. It was shown early in 2010. In Sweden, the iPad should start first class in school this year, and the iPhone, the smartphone, would enter the next grade in primary school. And we talk about these devices as if they've been around forever. And we talk about the digitalization of healthcare as it's very strange that we haven't used this all over the healthcare business already. But it's only 10 years, and I think we are quite good at using it. I think we have lots of examples this day of good examples. And then we have this strange movement, Quantify Self, who at the moment, I think at the moment, it's a movement that measures what is possible to measure and not what we want to measure, at least in healthcare. And the problem is that it induces new kind of diseases like heart rate monitoring anxiety or sleep movement deprivement. We are so anxious to measure ourselves with these gadgets like watches and so on, and the scientific proof of the value of that is still lacking. And now you can buy at any pharmacy an ECG registration device, and very soon someone will come to the GP and say, I have an ECG registration for the last year. And here in October and March, there are some irregularities. Is that something that I should be worried about? And as a doctor, I can only say, I haven't got an idea. I don't know how a normal 365-day ECG looks like. So this is a movement that we must embrace and see the possibilities of the technology, see the technology of the interest in health, but also incorporate in our regular work. And then we have the misinterpretation of the elderly. We can't use this technology because it can't be used by elderly people. And usually by elderly we mean 80 plus. Dagny on the left, lower, she's 105 and one of Sweden's most famous bloggers. She's a TV star, a movie star, and has become a personality in Sweden in the last 3 years, since she... and internationally as well, exactly. And the couple here seems to enjoy technology as well. We must admit that the society, our patients, our inhabitants, they embrace this technology in their everyday life. And sometimes I think we in healthcare are more afraid of their opinion about technology than they are themselves. We have a long debate here in Sweden about using cameras in the bedroom to monitor patients or individuals in the bed to see if they're still sleeping or up. And that was a discussion about Big Brother entering our home. But when we asked the old people in the home, they said it's much better to have a camera in my bedroom overviewing my sleep than waking up in the middle of the night by someone standing in my bedroom, asking me if I was sleeping, and I could say yes, I was. There is the discussion of integrity, and patient like me is, I think, a good way of meeting that worries as well. When patients feel they are in control of the information, in control of the usage of information, their view on integrity is a bit different than if something like, and this is a very Swedish joke, Transportstyrelsen is responsible for the information. And on the right side, you have seen the ads in TV if you watch Swedish television. Now you can get a handsome doctor and a handsome pharmacist in your bed at home when you feel a bit sick. And the interesting thing about Kry, which is a company providing medical services via the iPhone, is that it was founded not by people in the healthcare business, but by people working with e-commerce and using web technology. And they saw the possibility of building this application for healthcare. And I think that is something that we also must embrace. And then we have the very difficult question as members of the healthcare business. Do we really want this to happen? I mean, as a doctor, the meeting with the patients, that's what I live for. To feel the happiness when I can treat them successfully or comfort them when they're worried. Do we really want to do that via this technology? And looking historically, that might have been so. I mean, there were some nerdy doctors interested in IT many years ago, and Florence Nightingale has been the role model for many nurses throughout history. But nowadays, we have a different kinds of users. And if you looked at Dr. House, he really exists in healthcare. And he's totally devoted to medicine and to his art, the art of medicine, but he actually doesn't give a shit about the organization, the rules, the regulations, the economist, and the leadership of the hospital. And these single players, you know, me, myself, and I, they're entering our hospitals. And this is the Generation Y, and we've talked about that before. And I think that there is actually a very famous moderator of events like this, actually at this event, who says that when she enters her workplace, she leaves her digital competence in the door. And she is a very devoted doctor, thank you. But these youngsters, they won't enter a hospital or a GP station if we don't provide them with the tools that they are used to use at home and during studies. And as responsible for the more systematic level of healthcare in Västra Götaland, we are also very, very interested in full interoperability. And I think that is one of my main messages to entrepreneurs in this business. Focus on interoperability, because we can't have separate systems for separate diagnoses that can't communicate with each other. And this is taken from a European report some years ago, defining that if you want to achieve full interoperability, you have to define in what political context do you want to have it. And we define it as healthcare, both provided by the city councils and the municipalities. But we don't want to put other areas of the government into this context. And then we have to look at the legal interoperability. Is it legal to share information between these organizations? And several times the answer is no. And then you have to go to the politicians and say, we need a new law here, or a change law, or maybe a less law. Then we must work with organizational interoperability. Have we put our organization in a way that they can work together? And then the huge problem for us working with the e-health and IT and digitalization is semantic interoperability. Because the technical interoperability, I would say, is almost solved now. I mean, the cameras you're using to taking a picture of this picture, they can share that picture with everyone else, no matter what brand you have. But we must define the semantic content. And then we have the question of who has to do what when. And I like to stress this again. It's been said earlier. Innovation is not about things. It's not about gadgets or apps or procuring a new EHR. We must talk about innovation of politics, the way we govern our healthcare business. The organization, the processes, how we pay for services in the healthcare. And also, if there is a startup company working with innovation of healthcare culture, please come to me. Because I think the solution is actually snogging. And for you Swedish speaking, the translation will come in the next picture. This is the traditional way of talking about change management. But I think the solution is snogging. Because the problem is that it's very easy to say, I want to change. I want to change myself. I want to change my organization. But when it comes to the end of the day, I'm not really willing to make the effort. And as in normal snogging, when two people meet, they envision a common goal. And when that goal is in both heads, the rest is automatic or biological, maybe. And I think we must work with that to change the culture in healthcare. We must use the right words, the right pictures to actually make all the leaders, and the co-workers to really be willing to make the change. That is our big challenge.
Ska se. Jag ställer mig här. Yeah, I agree that culture is one of the most important things to change if we're going to achieve change at all. So I was kind of wondering, since you were saying there, you were describing people who work in healthcare. We have the sort of younger generation that will demand new ways of working, but we still have a lot of, and it's not just an age thing. There's people who want to move forward and who really want to move backward in all ages. So there's no, it's not really an age thing, but how do you...
You're still young. Oh, sorry.
Which is so funny. I'm not young, but never mind. But I think one of the things as you're moving forward in this project with the new, not an EHR, but really the information environment, as you're describing it,
yeah.
How are you going to guarantee that you get everyone on board? How are you going to snog the people working in Västra Götaland?
Mm. Well, that depends.
Not personally, I hope, because that would be...
Yes. I think that has to do with how you define everyone, because we know that everyone won't enter this travel. And when we compare, we often compare with American organizations. And in America, there are competing organizations providing healthcare. So they can say, well, if you don't like the way we do it, go to our competitor. They might want to do like you do. But I think that we have to focus on the ones willing and the ones wanting. because the ones wanting will be willing if the willing people get moving. And the ones who don't want, well, we'll have to drag them along.
So eventually the willing and the able are going to move us along, no matter what.
Yeah.
But how are you going to do that? How are you actually going to do that?
Well, I'm looking for some entrepreneurs here with innovation of culture. I think Anne-Marie had a point there. It's leadership and the governance of the structure we have to start with, because if we have one leader in the hierarchy who doesn't believe in the change, we know that we have a pyramid under that leader that won't believe in it either. So at the moment we're using the next year with communicating and educating the leaderships in the whole region.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to be part on this journey.
You're welcome.
And you'll have one of those. Thank you very much.